Creating designs for the skate deck can happen a couple of different ways. But both ways, we're going to create a layer between these two. So I'm going to create a new layer and name them designs, name it designs. And I'm going to put it above the skate deck and below the wheels. So any designs that I do are going to be under the wheels. Okay, so let's grab the pen tool. This is probably the simplest way to do it, but it's a bit limiting. So let's say I want like a couple of shapes, big block shapes going through. I could essentially be designing my shapes to go over the edge of the board, and I can kind of move it wherever I want it. And then what I'm going to do is select it, hold shift, and select the board, so the outer shape. I'm going to grab my shape builder tool, but instead of using it on the plus side, I'm going to hold alt, and it'll delete the overlapping parts that we don't want. It's a great method. The only disadvantage to that is it doesn't necessarily, like once you have that shape in that place, you kind of need it to like stay there. So there's no flexibility in that. But again, it's not a bad move. So if I do multiple shapes, okay, so I grab another one, or I can even grab my like shape tool itself. Okay, I'll grab this guy. Oh, make sure it's on the right layer so I can just cut it. Notice how I put it accidentally on that layer. Command X, or edit cut, go back up here, edit, paste in place. Okay, so I can move it where I want it. Again, hold shift, grab the outline of the board, grab your shape builder tool, hold alt to subtract, and click once. Okay, within the designs layer, pardon me, I can still grab this and throw it underneath and play around with layers that way. I could apply gradients to these guys, no big deal at all. So that is one way, and it's a perfectly good way, but just note that it is a little bit limiting. Okay, so the other way that we could go is by doing a clipping mask. So if I grab similar tools, let's do something like so. Okay, so now I've got a couple of shapes. I could use the outer shape of this board to make a clipping mask. Now, in order to do this, I need to make a copy of it because when you use something for a clipping mask, it deletes the visual properties of that shape. So if I were to use this yellow shape as my clipping mask, it would no longer be yellow. It would just look like this. Okay, so what I need to do is grab this skate deck, and I'm going to make a copy by going Edit Copy. And then I'm going to click on the Designs layer because this is where I want to paste it. Now I can't just go Edit Paste because if I go Command V or Edit Paste, it'll paste it off to the side. And we need it in the exact same spot, like to the pixel. So what I want to do instead is go Edit Paste in Place. Okay, and take it, oh, I didn't put it on the right layer. Take a look at what it did. It created a copy of it right over top. So I'm just going to drag that up to the top of this layer. So what you should be looking at is a sandwich. So I have one skate deck down here, and then I have another one in my designs layer. So now I select the clipping mask, so the shape I'm going to use for my clipping mask, and any other shapes underneath. So I'm going to hold shift, and I'm using my layers to select this. Object, clipping mask, make. So now take a look at what happened in my layer stack. Clip group, so it used that yellow skate deck shape as the clipping mask. So if I hide that layer, all of a sudden I can see all of my shapes. And then it just kept my paths underneath. Now what's the advantage to this? I mean, it looks the exact same, but if I don't like my yellow or my green circle there, I can select it using my layers, and then I can move it around within this mask. You could also select it using your artboard, but take a look. If I click on it once, it's going to default to click the entire group. All of these objects are grouped together. So I would need to double click it, and that's going to enter me into what's called isolation mode. So now look at my layers. I'm within just this clipping group. So now I can easily click and move things around without using my layer stack. I just accidentally double clicked, and now I'm deeper into isolation mode. So go back into your clip group. I can change colors of things within here, and then to get back out, here I am. So those are the two ways I would go about creating designs here. Now the only other thing I want to add, which is kind of just for fun, is to create a quick pattern. So I'm going to grab my ellipse tool to illustrate this idea, and I'm just going to use orange and zoom in a little bit here because I want it to be kind of to scale. What I mean by that is I'm going to make a polka dot pattern, and I want it to be kind of the size that I'm going to want it on my board. So there's one ellipse. I dragged that out holding shift. Now I'm going to grab my selection tool, and I'm going to hold alt and drag it out. And again, if I hold shift, it'll lock it. So I'm just going to keep it simple, and I'm going to have my shapes touching. So now I've got 3. I'm going to marquee select those, hold alt, hold alt. Okay, and I've got 9 circles. You could just do this with 1 circle too, but I kind of like to see the size. So if I find that like this pattern is going to be a bit too big, I'm going to scale it down a little bit. Okay, so now I'm going to marquee select all of these, and I'm just going to drag them in to my swatches panel. And take a look there. Now I can delete this one because I don't need it. This is now a swatch, an orange swatch, so I can't change the color of it unless I go into the pattern itself. But let's see what happens. So I'm going to delete this guy, okay, and I'm going to create another shape. Okay, just to show a point here. So my path is above my clipping group, that's fine. I'm going to apply the dots to it. And then I'm just going to drag this underneath the clipping mask. And there it is. Pretty sweet. So if I want to adjust this or make a copy of it, I need to go into Edit Pattern. So now I'm within the pattern itself. So this is where I could select those guys, change the color of it. You can see that you have a few other options in here that you could play around with. And I'm going to save a copy. Purple. Okay. And then I'm going to say done. Now for whatever reason, it's changing my initial one. I'm not too sure why. But if I made another copy, it would keep that original one purple. Okay, so the other way that you could do this, like I mentioned, oh, now I just changed my whole clipping mask. Hilarious. There we go. The other way that you could do this, sorry, it looks like I nudged my clipping mask. There we go. Perfect. You could just create one dot. So if I go and hold out shift, okay, and then I drag this guy in, it's also going to be a pattern. So for example, if I were to apply this, see that it is a pattern. And the advantage to doing it with one circle is if I go into pattern options, I believe, yeah, you can kind of change around and like change the gap, brick by row, or keep it grid. It's a little easier to change the sizes. This just kind of, this is giving you an area, how large essentially to repeat your pattern. You can change your width. That just is going to kind of overlap it. Size tile to art is just going to adjust that. Yeah, so you could kind of play around with what goes on in your pattern swatches. So this little guy changes out the spacing. Okay, so let's say I kind of like that. Yeah, that looks good. And let's just do done. Okay, perfect. So you can see that it's offset there. I select that. What happens if I use it? Perfect. Very cool. Okay, I'm going to drag that guy because I accidentally put it on the wrong one. So I'm going to cut it, paste it. This one I don't care if it pastes in place or not. And I'm going to drag it underneath. And there we have some designs. So those are a couple different ways that I would go about creating designs underneath your skate deck.